All right, welcome back to another edition of the Contrarians. We've got an esteemed panel with us today, and the question that we're going to cover in this panel is, what bands can you think of who were influential or relevant that people have kind of forgotten today, or they aren't really considered big influences today, or they're not commercial juggernauts, or they're just generally not talked about today, or if they are talked about, because I've got some that are kind of like this, if they are talked about, we don't get very good numbers on them, meaning a lot of people don't really want to hear about them, kind of thing. So I think that happens as well. So yeah, we're just going to go around the horn, and everybody's kind of got a free floating number of examples, and we'll let everybody go through all their examples. But let's start in France with Phil. Phil, what do you got?
Okay, yeah, I've got quite a few and varied examples here. Let's start with maybe almost all my examples are more or less legacy acts, but some of them go back more than others. So I would start first with, let's say, my two prog acts, which bizarrely still continue to be going to this day. One is Jethro Tull.
Okay.
Now, of course, I say how they keep going, and it's many fans, older and younger, complain that it's time for these guys to retire. We heard Coverdale recently retired. He announced it in a quite a Coverdalian way. Um, Ian Gillan announced that his health is not doing very well either, and he's gonna more or less retire too. And everyone's saying, good on you for that, and everyone should retire sooner or later. But on the other hand, many of these artists and bands, they don't know what else to do in their life. All they do is this. It's a bit like, imagine all these like basketball players who have to put their shoes up at, like, I don't know, 35, 36, and then they just get totally depressed. What do they do with the rest of their lives? And like, they don't want to retire. That's what they do, and that's what they'll continue doing regardless if they are relevant or irrelevant. But
Yeah.
I do find that, from a certain point on, they're just, it's like, what's the expression? Dragging a dead horse or something.
Flogging.
So
Yeah.
Jethro Tull, they've gone through a few ups and downs. Somewhere in the noughties, like in the late 90s, in the noughties, they kind of like went on a hiatus. It seemed like they didn't exist anymore. Then Ian Anderson returns with Martin Barr, I think, at some point. Yeah, I think in 2004, Martin Barr kind of just like they separated ways in a very inexplicable way, without not in an amicable way, it seems. And Ian Anderson kind of just continued, and it became the Ian Anderson band. It didn't feel anymore like Jethro Tull. Of course, Ian Anderson is more than 50% of Jethro Tull and of the brand name. But for me, it seems like Martin Barr was really part of that equation, and indispensable part of that equation. So
Mhm.
as many know, in the last 4 or 5 years, there's been a surge in the discography of Jethro Tull. So we've seen the Zella Gene around, I think, 21. Then came Rock Flute. And this year, I think, we've had Curious Ruminant, three albums that many would say, they're good considering how old Ian Anderson is. He cannot really sing anymore. Most of his singing is spoken word, and he seems to struggle live as well. But he keeps going, and good on him. It's nothing great, but considering everything, it's good. I don't subscribe to that. For me, it's like Ian Anderson is one of the greatest musicians in the history of rock. He is a trailblazer. He has churned out some of the most, such quality music, not just in the holy period of the 70s, but also later on. Broadsword are not bad albums. War Child is pretty decent as well. I really like that album. And I don't subscribe to this logic. So for me, the albums that he's released in these last 3 years don't feel relevant to the brand name, the brand appeal of Jethro Tull, and everything that Jethro Tull has stood for. Some songs remind me of that. They have that feel of what I associate with Jethro Tull music, but it doesn't feel at all like Jethro Tull. I cannot stand the way his voice sounds. I know he's getting old. He doesn't have it anymore in him. And what is he gonna do? Of course, he'll want to continue to do at the best he can at what he always does. But it doesn't feel okay to me anymore. It doesn't feel relevant. And yeah, they're touring, as a legacy act. They play some new songs as well, but mostly it's, Aqualung, a little bit of Thick as a Brick, the usual kind of best of hits, but they don't feel relevant anymore. It really feels like that legacy act that's just dragging, and no one's interested anymore.
Yeah. All right.
Similar.
Well, let's just go around the horn. Do
Okay,
one
yeah. I mean,
by
I
one.
already talked a lot
Yeah.
about that, so I'll keep
Yeah,
the rest
yeah.
for later.
If you guys are going to talk in good detail about it, I'm not. I don't have a lot of detail, but let's go over to Oliver next.
Yeah, I had a bit of a different approach because what we on the Contrarians we often talk about that rift between grunge and hair metal and how bands that sold millions from one day to the next were basically unemployed, if you will. But often there are more singular reasons to why a band falls out of fashion. Sometimes it's just bad choices they make, and yeah, my first pick is a band from LA, and they've been influential for I think 10 years, progressed with every album. It's the Suicidal Tendencies,
Okay.
and they started with a debut I think in '83, classic of skate punk or crossover you could say, and then over the next 10 years they refined their sound and got more and more popular and got good reviews as well. And I mean, you could say that this Mike Muir guy, he's a bit of a funny guy with his bandana over the eyes, and
Yeah.
but yeah, then he progressed and he did stuff that no one thought in the beginning that was possible. I think that was one of my favorites back when I was 14, 15. Their fourth album, Lights, Camera, Revolution, with Rob Trujillo on bass. And then in '92, I think, they released this one, which is almost proggy. Yeah, it's highly ambitious, got good reviews. You wouldn't have expected this 10 years before then. And then next album they did was Suicidal for Life, and Mike Muir decided to go back and did this kind of jokey stuff and back to the roots, and suddenly the respect was gone. I think he had this Infectious Groove thing going where he was playing funk metal, and it was a weird choice because he got better and better with his band, more ambitious musically, and then all of a sudden he decided, well, let's do funny skate punk again. And yeah, I don't know what happened there. And if you look at, they are still doing albums, I think. And if you look at the covers, they seem like they are not even trying anymore. Very weird. I don't know what was going on there.
It's a very good point. Yeah, they kind of just went away. They went underground, became kind of an indie band. I mean, the biggest profile thing they did in the last while is I just saw them supporting Pantera and then Metallica at the big Metallica shows, which is pretty bizarre. But you're right, and yeah, it felt like it in the album covers and in just the music and the sporadic kind of release schedule and stuff. It's you're right. They kind of just went away.
Yeah,
it's true.
Another band, pretty similar, I think, but is Danzig, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And Danzig.
Well, hold that one. Let's just go around. Let's do one.
Okay,
one each
okay,
kind
for
of thing.
sure.
Yeah. Okay, Alex, what do you got?
Okay, so I approach this. Irrelevant is a harsh term if you're a fan of these bands. So I did pick artists that I'm a big fan of. So when I say irrelevant, that's to the masses. It still means something to us music fans that are, completists and so forth. Mm-hmm. And I think Phil had a great point that, in sports, you do have a shelf life, and when it's over, it's over. You can last a couple of years past your prime, but eventually you're off the bench. And in music, there is no such thing. You could be 90 and you're going to show up at a club and play for two people. That's just what you do, even if maybe you shouldn't, but there's nobody to tell them no, right? So again, with the people that the artists I selected, the legacy is cemented. So the first band, let me give you some stats on this. They were one of the most successful bands of the 90s. They sold 18 million copies in the US. They sold 40 million albums worldwide. They had 16 top 10 songs on the rock charts, 8 of those #1. In '94, they won an AMA for Best New Band. Same year, they won a Grammy for Best Hard Rock Performance, and that is Stone Temple Pilots. So I know there was some controversy. They formed in 89 in California, and there was some controversy when it came out that they were just jumping on the grunge bandwagon. And that first album sort of has that element, but I think they progressed into something much more than that. To me, Scott Weiland is a total rock star. He had the charisma, he had the voice, he had the stage presence, and the band as a unit, and they pretty much kept that lineup throughout the history of the band. Dean and Robert DeLeo, and Eric Kretz, switching out singers. But so let's start with the first album. So Core comes out 92, gets to number 3 on the Billboard 200 chart, sells 8 million in the US alone. It has on the mainstream rock charts, we have the first song that comes out is Sex Type Thing. That gets to 23. Then the big push for them is Plush. That becomes number 1. Then we have Wicked Garden, also number 1 on the mainstream rock charts. And then we also have Creep, which is number 2. So big album, also produced by Brendan O'Brien early in his career. This is a year before he does Pearl Jam Versus, and he sticks with the band throughout their career. So, maybe the critics didn't love them, but the fans certainly did right out the gate. And then we go to the second album, which is Purple in 94. So this does 6 million units in the US. So down 2 million, but still, I think most people would take 6 million in sales. This also debuts number 1 on the Billboard Top 200 chart. Again, on the rock singles chart, Interstate Love Song hits number 1, stays there for 15 weeks, a record at that time. So again, you can see this is a band that is going places. They also have hits with Vaseline and Big Empty, which is also on the Crow soundtrack. So, we're establishing this band now as a force to be reckoned with. So we then get to the third album, which is Tiny Music. So this hits number 4, released in 96, hits number 4 on the Billboard 200, only 2 times platinum. So now we go 8, 6 down to 2, but mainstream rock, they still have 3 number 1 singles: Big Bang Baby, Lady Picture Show, Tripping on a Hole in a Paper Heart. But this is the first time now they take a break, right? There's turmoil in the band, and for a short time they go their separate ways. The 3 remaining members of Stone Temple Pilots get a new singer and form Talk Show, which to me is not a good album at all. During that time, Scott Weiland puts out his first solo album, which I think is a great album, owes everything to Bowie, but still a great album. So success isn't really there for anybody in any way, shape, or form. They get back together. They put out fourth album. This is 1999. This gets to number 4 on the top 200, but only platinum. Okay, so now we're down 8 to 1. They do have a hit with Sour Girl. That is actually the only song that cracked the Billboard Hot 100 singles at 78 and number 4 on the mainstream rock chart. So again, still popular, but sort of less and less so. Then we get to Shangri-La-Di-Da, which is in 01. It does get to number 1, but now we only go gold and the band breaks up. So in the interim, Scott goes off and does Velvet Revolver, 2 albums with some success, but then he gets kicked out of that band because Scott was being Scott at that time. So after that, we go to their 6th album, which comes out in 2010. It does get to number 2 in the Billboard charts, but it does not certify. So you can sort of see the beginning is the beginning of the end is there. He gets dismissed from this band now in 2013, and unfortunately 2015 he passes away. So any type of reunion of that classic lineup is not going to happen. They did try to move on in 2013. They got Chester Bennington from Linkin Park to be their singer, and Linkin Park had their own huge success. That lasts a couple of years, doesn't really go anywhere. They replace him with Jeff Gutt. They released 2 albums in 2016 and 2020. And I ask anybody to name a song off of either of those albums. So a lot of this had to do with the fact that the original lineup didn't stay together, and lineup changes, and people lost interest. At the same time, again, I mentioned the stats at the beginning. This was a band that really had it all, and now is barely spoken about.
Nice. Good job. Okay, yeah. My first one, I took a little bit of a different approach. Well, maybe it's a similar approach, but there's actually two bands that I think about when I think of this question all the time. It's almost getting to be a cliche with me. So I'm just gonna shoot my shot with one of them here, because I've always been fascinated by this crazy story. But it's Creed. There's my own prison where I sat down and interviewed them at Attic Records, and they wrote on here, thanks for the interview. Very cool. And I remember sitting in this interview, and the label rep stuck her head in the door and said, guess what? Your album just went platinum in the States while I was in the middle of the interview. So what I find fascinating about this story is that this goes 6 times platinum. Human Clay goes 11 times platinum. This is a diamond
Jesus
album.
Christ.
And then the next one, Weather, goes 6 times platinum. And then I think they have a reunion album that didn't certify at all. And the reason I mention these guys is that they really strike me as perfect for this because they have no reputation. Nobody ever talks about them that I notice. Like, they just seem to have disappeared from the discourse. Yet this is a band with a diamond album. And there's, it might be a cool show to it might be a cool show to look at the most unsung diamond albums of all time. But this would definitely be in there. Part of it might have had to do with the overlay of possible Christian lyricism to them. And then later on, Scott gets into a bit of bad boy trouble. They do live on. With some success. Mark Tremonti has made a really good career out of himself with Alter Bridge, and then Tremonti, and he's played with Wolfgang Van Halen as well, or where's the other way around? Anyways, he's had a good career, and he's kind of a known quantity. But yeah, it just feels like this band out of all of them. And Alex, I do like your Stone Temple Pilots idea there too, because they're not particularly talked about too much either anymore. But Creed just seems to be one of these wiped from the public consciousness bands. So there you go. All right, on to Phil. Give us your second one.
Right. Gee whiz. Okay, I have so many things here. All right, I'm gonna go with one band that, like with Alex, means a lot to me, for its history, for the fact that I think it was an influential band. They did leave their mark in heavy metal, in thrash metal in particular. But I think that they don't mean much anymore. And that band for me is Anthrax. I adore Anthrax. I mean, Fistful of Metal, great. Classic speed kind of metal. Okay, and then we get, to the good stuff, with also Among the Living, of course. And I do like State of Euphoria. And I also like the stuff they did later with John Bush as well. John Bush is an amazing singer. I really like Armored Saint as well. He was almost going to sing in Metallica at some point. I mean, he's a really great unsung hero, I think, of metal among metal vocalists. And he's a really cool guy, really, really down to earth kind of guy. And yeah, I mean, I really appreciated that at some point, they kind of went away from their kind of groovy thrash roots, and they did that kind of rap metal thing. I appreciate the experimentation. I appreciate the sort of alternative turn they took later with John Bush and all that. Ultimately, in 2016, they returned to something that sounds like, For All Kings, something that's kind of like Anthrax by numbers. Pretty good album. I like it quite a bit. It's not a masterpiece, but it's pretty good. Their last album was in 2016. It's basically been 10 years. Since then, they've been touring a lot. They're doing well. I've seen them a couple of times. They're great live. Scott Ian is, still one of the great rhythm guitar players in heavy metal, in thrash metal. Great stage presence and all of that. They get a crowd, of course, and they are considered as part of the Big Four, although that Big Four thing doesn't seem to exist anymore. I think Metallica they have become this humongous industry of their own. Megadeth are still big, but they just announced Mustaine announced also that he's retiring. We'll see how that goes. Slayer is, I don't know, the definition of a legacy act. I don't know if they are or aren't anymore. They play some festivals, okay. After they lost Jeff Hanneman, the juices were no longer really going there. But Anthrax, for me, they haven't released a new album. They've been talking about new material, but we don't see anything coming. They keep touring and playing, among the living and spreading the disease, the greatest hits from that era, as though they didn't release anything really after that. And while their music was really great and important in the story of thrash metal in the US, and they became part of that big four, although many say that it shouldn't be them, it should be Testament or Exodus, I don't find that their music is any more relevant, as in it doesn't influence so many bands or younger bands. You don't see any up and coming thrash metal bands that really seem to hark to Anthrax, and I just feel like they too are kind of like stuck maybe somewhere. They're not progressing, they're not going with the times. You see bands like some of the German bands like Creator. I don't like at all what they're playing at the moment, but man, they've become so relevant. Creator have like amassed a huge crowd of Gen Z fans. They've become so much more they have a huge niche, much bigger niche in the market. They've become more relevant than they used to ever be in the 80s and the 90s. Like, I don't know how some bands do that. It's remarkable, But Anthrax have kind of like are lagging behind, so I feel like they're not so relevant anymore. Even though they mean a lot to me, I still listen to them. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think another thing that happens here a little bit is you do hear the stories, Billy Milano trashing him and stuff. And that builds up after a while. People like Scott Ian, maybe not the nicest guy stories you hear all the time, right? I've heard people say that about Charlie as well. And, there's the bad blood with Joey Belladonna and how much into it is he really and all that kind of stuff. So those stories build up over the years. So when you get bad will building up, all of a sudden, people start complaining and caring less as well.
Not to mention that Charlie Benante, I mean, who is like not just one of the greatest drummers in metal, but he's also one of the greatest he's not, is he the frontman of Anthrax? I mean, he's like the Lars Ulrich of Anthrax, right? He's like the manager, he's the composer, right?
I love those guys too. I mean, I even like them, as people as well. I'm just saying,
Benante is awesome.
There is that reputation out there though about them, right?
Yeah, Benante is a great guy. He's a real fan. I love the fact that he's like a good friend of Mike Portnoy, who's my favorite drummer. But he's doing his thing with Pantera, I don't know for how many years now, and there is rumor of them possibly even writing music as Pantera. So I mean, there's a lot of money there as well. I don't see what Anthrax can do anymore with Benante being busy with Pantera.
Yeah. All right. Nice job. Excellent.
Just real quick, I love Anthrax as well. I think, one thing that hurt him is they were a little jokey too, right? And again, I love Joey. I love the band. I wasn't happy when Joey got booted out of the band. I thought that was the wrong move, even though I liked the Bush stuff. But they always had that element of it wasn't, into the silliness of, some parody kind of thrash bands.
Yeah.
But it was just enough that took the edge off of them and made them the fourth of the big four.
Yeah, it made sense. Good point. It makes sense. Yeah.
All right. Very cool. Oliver, what do you got for us? Second one.
Yeah. I already mentioned I got Danzig.
Right. Yep.
First album comes out in 88, I think, with a very iconic cover, almost as iconic as the Misfit skull, I think, what he did there. And he grew. Sales grew up until I think number 3, How the Gods Kill, came out in 92. Got more and more popular, even in metal circles, which wasn't his home originally. And then it went a bit downhill when he released the fourth album. But it was still okay, I think. But after that, he decided to go industrial, and he did Black Acid Devil at the same time, and he released it on a Disney label, I think. And there was a bit of was a bit of controversy because people were picking up that he was on Disney, which didn't fit with his image. And I think someone I just read about it made some kind of humorous graphic or something like that. Then the guys at Disney got pissed and threw him out. But I think what led to his downfall initially is I think Glenn Danzig is a bit of an egomaniac. He thinks he's the greatest. But when you listen to that Black Acid Devil album, he couldn't pull this one off. I think I haven't heard it for 30 years, but I thought back then I thought it was terrible. I was shocked when I listened to it. Mm-hmm. And I think he never recovered from that. The last album he did was an Elvis cover album, I think. I didn't listen to it, but I heard it was terrible because he's now 70 and can't sing that well anymore.
It's horrible.
But I think here's the case of one guy who doesn't know his area of expertise and trying to go beyond that and experimenting, but not pulling it off and losing everything he had before. Plus label politics and stuff coming into it. So I think, he was on the verge of being a big star, at least in metal and alternative circles, or he was for a while, but then it went just poof, and he was gone.
Good point. Yeah. And again, there's another one where the stories build up over time, and that erodes your reputation. And there were some other good albums in there and stuff. The Elvis one, I know everybody complained about the vocals being too high in the mix. Like the mix was really horrendous on it as well, right? So good choice. Good choice. All right, Alex, what do you got for your second one?
So there's two quick follow-ups. You had mentioned Creed is kind of wiped from everyone's mind, and to that I say good. Right. And two, I'm one of the few people that actually like that fifth Danzig album. It's not a masterpiece. I like it, but they just reissued the first 4 on vinyl, and nothing can top 3. That is a masterpiece.
Nice.
All right, so I'm going to bring up someone. We are the Contrarians, right? That has probably never been mentioned on this channel, but I think it's worthy, especially in this context. And some may say a one-hit wonder. It really was a one-album wonder, and that's when he fell off. It's also an artist that was much bigger in the UK, and I wanted to bring a little bit of that flavor since we have a worldwide show today with the panel. So in '87, this guy came out swinging. Some would say confident, some would say cocky. When you make a comment that this album is...
I think I know who you're talking about.
So he makes the comment of, this is the most important recording since Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's, right? And that is Terence Trent D'Arby.
Yeah.
Who I love, and gets compared to Prince, and Prince is my number one, but I like him because he is unique.
I don't know this artist at all. Can you just
Terence Trent D'Arby?
Something like...
I think he's a genius, and he's twice as great as Prince is. I love that.
Whoa! Oh my gosh!
I mean, I was bought in hook, line, and sinker into that whole thing. The first couple of albums.
He's twice as tall as Prince, probably.
Twice as tall. Yeah. So, Mark, you really shocked me there because nobody tops Prince for me. But but here's what's important about him, and I'll get into sales though. So we're talking about the late '80s. He kind of spearheads what becomes neo soul in the '90s. So along with Tony, but we're talking about D'Angelo and Angie Stone and Maxwell, Lauryn Hill. He's before that, but his palette is broad. You know, if you want to say he's an R&B artist, okay, and that's the essence. But there's rock, there's funk, there's just so much going on with him. And he is a musical genius. And like Prince, he does write and produce and arrange and all of this stuff. So, and I'm I prove I'm a fan. There's my signed Terence Trent D'Arby photo. Although it's a scribble, but there it is. So, so that's the album we're talking about. The first album. This is Introducing the Hardline according to Terence Trent D'Arby. Okay. So comes out in '87. And as you can see from the hype sticker, in the US, it says #1 platinum LP in the UK already on the hype sticker. And this is a US copy. It goes to #1 in the UK. It goes to #4 in the US. It sells 8 million copies worldwide. Again, pretty good for a debut, pretty good number. In the UK, it goes 5 times platinum. So he wins a Grammy also for Best Male R&B Vocal. So he bought into the hype that was bestowed upon him, and this is where the confidence / arrogance comes from. But when you come out the gate like this is what happens. So the first single that gets released is If You Let Me Stay. That only gets to 68 in the US. Doesn't make much of a splash. The next single, though, is Wishing Well. And Phil, if you don't know that song, just Terrence Trent D'Arby, Wishing Well, and you'll see what really set this guy on fire. That goes to number one. That goes to number one on the Billboard Hot 100. There's the 12-inch, which has songs that aren't on the album, and also a remix. I highly recommend that. He then has Dance Little Sister is the next single. That only gets to 30, but then he gets back with Sign Your Name. That goes to number 4 in the U.S. chart. So this guy is ready to become a superstar. But again, his ego gets in front of him. So what comes next is Neither Fish Nor Flesh. This comes out in 89. In the UK, now remember, he's a big star there. This only goes to 12 and is only on the chart for 4 weeks. In the US, it goes gold. No, I'm sorry. It only goes gold in the UK. In the US, it does not even certify, and it only makes it to 61 on the Billboard Top 200. Problem is, this is also not introducing part 2. He really goes off in some different directions. People just didn't get it. Again, much like Prince, Prince had some albums where people just didn't understand what he was doing because all he wanted was Purple Rain and When Doves Cry, and he wasn't about that. He wanted to move on, and Terrence Trent D'Arby moved on. So we then go
a bit like Kid A for Radiohead or the second Blood Melon album.
Right? Absolutely, yeah. And again, I like it and I get it, but it wasn't radio friendly, right? Let's say that. So next album, third album comes out. In the UK, it gets to 4. It has 4 top 20 songs, but in the US, top 200, 119. So we're seeing a big drop. No hits, no certification. Again, I don't know about you, Martin, but I think this is a damn good album. Again, lots of diversification. And, to me, when I get into an artist, it's the voice. I'm not a musician, so I appreciate all the instruments, guitar, bass, drum, but I focus on the vocals. And this guy can sing, okay? So now we go to Vibrator. This is now 1995. In the UK, 11, but in the US, now we're down to 178. It's just losing steam as he goes. And then we have Wild Card, which is released in 01. No charting, no sales. Basically, no one cares about Terrence Trent D'Arby. So he kind of goes away and then reinvents himself again, much like Prince, not a symbol, but now he calls himself Sananda Maitreya. And you would say, Oliver, you didn't know Terrence Trent D'Arby? I'm sure you don't know that name, right? So, and you say, well, he went away and what did he do? Well, here's what he did. Okay. All of this. From 2001 till now, he has released 9 albums, many of them double CD sets with 20 to 40 songs.
Right, those look like DVDs or what?
Oh, that's what they come in DVD cases. Yeah, they give you a booklet. You get two. Yes, that's how he does them. All done by himself. He's now living in Italy. He's doing what he wants whenever he wants. Again, I would not recommend these to anyone that has never heard Terrence Trent D'Arby or Sananda. I would say go back to the original stuff. But if you become a fan, these are great releases. They're just verbose, right? He doesn't have an editor. He doesn't have a producer. He is just sitting there recording whatever he wants. Couple, 10, 20, 30-second songs to 4 or 5 minute songs. I hate when people say they listen to anybody that has a voice they like and can sing the phone book. I don't want to hear a bunch of listed names. That's stupid. But I will hear him sing any of his songs, good, bad, or indifferent. I just, love what he does. So, again, someone who is totally out of sight, out of mind, unless you're a hardcore fan. But that debut is undeniable.
Nice. Good job. Okay, excellent. I guess we'll just do 3 each because that'll take us to our time. So I'll go with the next band that I always bring up when this topic comes up, and that's Grand Funk. Grand Funk Railroad. Hope nobody wanted this one, but there you go. And there's another copy of Live. There's a copy of Phoenix. So this is a funny band where kind of like the Creed situation. This band goes gold, platinum, double platinum, 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 gold, platinum, gold, gold. And they've got a double platinum live album in there too. And nobody talks about these records, I don't think. I mean, a little bit in our circles just because they have such a vast catalog. I mean, beyond the certification, they probably have, I don't know, 4 or 5 more. I mean, it really peters out, and then they really nobody likes kind of what they do in later life. And then they're just kind of a touring band, and Bruce Kulick was in the band and all kinds of stuff, right? But they were just this huge band with an intense amount of stuff coming out all the time. I'm not a fan of them very much at all, because people keep saying they're so heavy, or they're a proto metal band and all this, and I never hear that out of them. And I feel they've had kind of no influence. The only thing anybody kind of remembers anymore is "We're an American Band," that song, and they kind of joke about it because it's like this famous cowbell song. And they got the album cover where they're naked, and then the muscle thing, and yeah, they've got one produced by Frank Zappa. It just feels like a band that was, and they were advertised to death. They had management problems, but they also had kind of good steamrolling management that got them into a lot of situations. And all those gold and platinums I rattled off. This is also one of those famous bands that was whacking in 2 records a year kind of thing. They were getting a lot of output out. So from whenever it starts, might be 69, might be right about that. I think I'm right about that. Through about 73, they're just like ubiquitous. They're everywhere. They're just this huge band. And I think people have just completely forgotten this band. So that's my choice, Grand Funk. Yeah.
Huh.
All right, Phil, what do you got for your
Okay.
last one?
My last choice is the band that for many, or maybe not for many, I don't know, if it weren't for Rush, we would say that these guys were the originators of prog metal. And I'm not talking about Dream Theater because they're quite relevant at the moment. No, the band is Queensryche. Now, of course, Queensryche, everyone knows Rage for Order. Of course, the hugely acclaimed Operation Mindcrime. They became quite a big band in the 80s. They toured a lot. They did quite big concerts. They were quite a novelty act, I think, at the time. They are possibly one of the originators of prog metal. But the way they used to play prog metal, no one plays it anymore like this. In fact, no one even plays prog metal anymore like Dream Theater. Bands that are considered prog metal, they are what some call gent, like Periphery or whatever, or Tesseract. But anyway, Queensryche, lots of egos in that band. And after this great, very experimental dark album, Promised Land, they went on and released a bunch of really weird albums that are just like testify to the fact that there was a big identity crisis in this band, clashing egos. Things are not going well. Indeed, they are releasing one bad album after the next, very bizarre albums that don't make any sense, that seem to be completely at odds with what most fans have identified Queensryche to be, musically, sonically, even aesthetically. And a lot of turbulence. The frontman, one of the greatest voices in metal, one of those great operatic kind of like, prog singers, who's also a great interpreter of lyrics, who really embodies the characters that he sings about. He leaves the band, and they get Todd La Torre, who is a great musician, amazing drummer. And he's a singer who can quite very well replicate that kind of like, operatic, very high caliber singing of Jeff Tate. But they release also albums that are just kind of go at best, they go unnoticed. They don't get any critical acclaim. The numbers are not really significant. They're playing in small clubs. They're not really playing big festivals or anything. They're not the kind of legacy act anymore that seems to, have a steady stream of fans and a lot of touring where at least they perform for big crowds their legacy. That's what they're doing now. Basically, they've been touring, playing. I think they're the first LP of the band, The Warning, with Todd La Torre on vocals. They've also released a few albums with him. The more recent ones are okay. The Verdict from 2019 and Digital Noise Alliance, DNA. Haha, get it. In 21, I think, as well. Just like right after the pandemic. But those albums, they kind of just come and they pass. People forget about them. You hear them a couple of times, you say, okay, there are a few good tunes, and then you kind of just forget about them. No critical acclaim again. So they really seem very irrelevant. There's hardly any original members left in the band. Um, there are legal problems. Jeff Tate is doing his own solo thing, always playing Operation Mindcrime or Rage for Order or Empire. He's released a few solo albums, which are, again, just kind of strange. Don't make, they cannot really, he doesn't come, his what he wants to do doesn't come across in any way. So I've seen him a few times. He does a good job, bringing to life again those characters from Operation Mindcrime and Rage for Order and all of that. But small clubs and everything. It seems like they're just kind of fading, and with that goes their legacy in many ways. And they seem to have gone from a kind of like significant band for this genre to a very niche band, and not following, of course, with the times as well. Not modernizing their sound in any way or their composition style. So I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Nice. Okay, Oliver, what do you got? Last one.
Yeah, I got another band from the 90s. And it's a band that rose to prominence with a kind of sound that was not really in fashion back in the day. There weren't too many bands that were playing the sound they were playing, but it's way more popular now. And I wonder what they could do if they hadn't fallen out of fashion. And I'm going to talk about why they fell out of fashion, and the band is Monster Magnet. Monster Magnet released their debut in 91. Funnily, I read today it was a German label where they were releasing first, Spine of God. And they were doing a kind of psychedelic desert rock, you could say. Not too many bands were playing that kind of druggy, spaced out sound in the 90s. Say Caius, which came a bit later. And over the next few years, Monster Magnet stuck to that sound and got more and more popular. 93, they released Super Judge. And in 95, Dopes to Infinity, both were critically acclaimed. Even in metal circles, the band was picking up steam with their sound. And they refined their sound, got better and better with it, doing these druggy, spaced out, long songs. And in 98, they released Power, which was a slight departure from their sound, more streamlined. But I loved that album back in the day. I thought it was a really cool hard rock album. Yeah, obviously owing much to other hard rock bands, but in this era, there weren't too many who were doing it that straight with those cool lyrics and stuff. And I think that's when everything went wrong for them, because I think they tried to market themselves as these kind of rock gods from that point on. When the focus went on the front man instead of the music. And I think for the next song they had, when they were playing live, all of a sudden they had go-go dancers on stage, which kind of turned people off when they saw them live, because it was basically an independent rock crowd, alternative rock crowd, and all of a sudden you have half-naked ladies dancing. That was something you would expect from Motley Crue, but not from Monster Magnet. And I think that was what turned a lot of people off, and they didn't recover from that. I just looked at the sales. I think Power Trip went gold in US. It was 21 in Germany, And God Says No in the US, their next album from 2000 went to number 153 in the US. So huge drop, and yeah, they never recovered. And I don't know, they still exist, I read, but I have never heard of them since.
Absolutely true. Great choice. Yeah, just another band that was all the rage. I remember during that time. There's a lot of hype about them, and then yeah, we just really don't hear about them in the news as much anymore. So nice choice. Excellent. All right, Alex, what do you got? Last one.
Just back on Oliver's pick real quick, because I worship Monster Magnet. Dave Weinroth, I think, is one of the great frontmen. Even when they were popular, I don't think they got the love they deserved. They wrote great songs. Name me a better song than Space Lord. That is catchy as hell. And they have put out a number of albums in the past few years, a cover tunes album that just went nowhere. I have them. I love them. I wish more people listen to them. So great choice.
Yeah.
There is one song that's better than the one you mentioned. It's Power Trip. I love that one.
Oh, sure. Okay.
I'll go with that. Too.
Yeah. All right. So again, being on the Contrarians, I don't know if I'm going to have my card revoked because I keep bringing up bands that probably have never been mentioned on here, but this is one that is important. They formed in '85 in Roosevelt, New York, and they became one of the most important voices in all of music and just in the world in what they spoke about, and that is the rap group Public Enemy. So two main guys that have been there since the beginning, Chuck D, who is a combination of Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, and what he has to say, how he has to say it. You know, the great thing about Public Enemy is they were delivering the news in real time and in real speak, and not sugarcoating things. So a lot of people learned about social injustice and things that were going on in the world, and especially in the United States, that should not have been, that were not being covered by the regular news outlet. If you wanted to know what was going on, you listened to Public Enemy. So from 87 to 94, they put out 4 albums that I think are 4 definitive rap albums. I argue as good a 4-album run as anybody ever had. And that all starts with Yo Burma Rush the Show, which came out in 87. This is on Def Jam, so Rick Rubin is the executive producer. The top 200 Billboard, it only gets to 125, but again, this is a rap album in 87, and it's not Run DMC, and it's not real commercial. So still good chart position, and it does go gold, and it sort of cements what is to come. So next, we have that, which is It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back. So this is 88. This now goes platinum. And again, for a band of this ilk, that's a big number in 1988. The top 200 chart, it hits 42. And then there was, at that point, we called Black Music or Black LP chart. That went to number 1 on that chart. And this was their kind of Marvin Gaye, What's Going On album. So again, delivering messages that needed to be delivered. Maybe some people didn't want to hear it, but you know, this was real stuff that was going on. Countdown to Armageddon, Bring the Noises on this. Prophets of Rage, which will come up down the road a little bit. So again, now they're cementing themselves as a force to be reckoned with. And so next is this, which is Fear of a Black Planet, which comes out in 1990. This now gets on the Billboard 200 at 10. So, they're making progress in the chart position. Now the black music chart has changed to, it's called R&B and hip hop. It gets to number 3. This goes 2 times platinum. So the momentum is there, and 2 big songs off of this, Fight the Power and 911. Both of those get to number 1 on the rap singles chart. More importantly, 911 gets to number 34 on the Hot 100, right? So the basic Billboard chart. Again, big deal. They survived the controversy over Professor Griff and his anti-Semitic remarks on the last album. That was a little bit of an issue for them, but now they're moving on with this album, which to me is the pinnacle of their music, the pinnacle of them delivering the message that is important to them and to others. This is full of sound bites and samples and loops. It's a dense, it's a heavy album. It's very complex for a rap album. And they follow that up then with the 4th of the 4 that I mentioned. This is 1991, Apocalypse 91, The Enemy Strikes Black. This now on the top 200 chart goes to number 4. The rap hip hop chart, of course, it goes number 1. 3 singles off of this. One is shut them down. But the B side of that is By the Time I Get to Arizona, which raises some controversy and kind of, puts them back in the news. And at that time, then they also released Bring the Noise with, we'll go back to you, Phil, with Oliver. So now we have a great collaboration, which fortunately, unfortunately, I lean on the unfortunately side, kind of ushers in new metal to some degree, right? After that, what happens? They sort of disappear. Now, I will say from 99 to 2025, they've released 11 albums. I'm a big fan of the band. I only have one of those. It just sort of, they went away. And we talked about this on a previous show. You got a kind of a cycle of any type of music. And rap is very much like that. There's a tight cycle for a lot of this. Run DMC had 4 albums between 84 and 88, and then sort of went away. And they were the biggest band around. Ice-T between 87 and 91 had 4 big albums, popular albums, disappeared. He did some more rap, but then he moves into Body Count. Even Wu-Tang Clan, they had 4 albums between 93 and 01, put out tons of other side projects, solo things. They are still recording music, but they're not spoken about. To me, again, Public Enemy went nowhere. I don't want to say they're irrelevant because that was the most relevant music, and it's still to this day, the messages they were delivering are important and relevant. But as far as being in the limelight, being in the mainstream, you don't hear anything about Public Enemy. I will say Chuck D got with the guys from Rage Against the Machine and Be Real from Cypress Hill and did Prophets of Rage, which I thought was fantastic. And I thought, okay, here we go. We're going to start having Chuck D be out there again and known. And then Zach comes back into the band. Rage Against the Machine reforms, lasts very briefly, disbands, and now we may not hear anything from Prophets of Rage, which is a shame. But back on Public Enemy, that's a band that I urge everyone to listen to those first 4 albums and absorb what Chuck D is saying in those records.
Sweet. Nice. Okay, excellent. My very last choice is kind of similar. Ted Nugent. This is a guy that sold as many records as Aerosmith and Kiss did during his run, 75, say, through to this album, 1980. A lot of platinums, golds, double platinums in there. Didn't ride the hair metal thing too well, other than Damn Yankees. And it's really the politics. It's going so far right that I remember in the in the 70s, you would hear a little bit of that, but it would be more like going off on a hunting safari and stuff. And you see him on his Jeep and stuff like that. Right. And it was never taken very, it was never any kind of polarity to it. It never became a big deal, but he became more and more extreme over the years. And like I say, didn't really ride. You would think he would have ridden through hair metal quite well. Kiss and Aerosmith did. But yeah, always sold more records than Blue Oyster Cult as well. It's just a huge star through the 70s, playing all those big shows. And then I wanted to bring him up because I remember a story. I don't know which one it was or how true this is, but I remember years after this album came out. So it would have either been Love Grenade or Crave Man. But I remember someone looking that up on SoundScan or something and telling me that it sold in the triple digits. It sold less than 1,000 copies. So this is an artist that really he doesn't even, I don't even know if he has that big a cult following on the right, really. But in the general public, he's kind of been blackballed from doing big shows like through those years before things got really left right in America. I remember seeing him playing with Lynyrd Skynyrd or playing in Hamilton or playing in Toronto and stuff. No more. I mean, none of that happens. He can't play Canada anymore. Right. So he's kind of become a very specific concert experience. He's out of the mainstream of playing shows. And then when it comes to the records, like I say, they're just really not selling that much. I feel like we still talk about him a lot. And when an album comes out, people in circles like ours will review it and things. So that still seems to be around. But yeah, it's a very special case where it's all the, being a spokesman for the NRA and all that kind of stuff has made a lot of people super hostile to Ted, and other reasons. There's a bunch of reasons which I won't go into, but that's my final choice. So there you go.
You know what's
All right.
interesting in some of these cases, if I might just interject quickly, is that some of these artists and bands like Stone Temple Pilots and Ted, they were huge in the US, much less in Europe. And I think it's interesting to see if maybe some of these bands and others that we haven't mentioned that indeed have become, let's say, generally irrelevant, if they are maybe less relevant in the US and more in Europe and vice versa. It's
a good point, Phil, because and also, to extrapolate on that, what might also be happening is if you never went and made that step where you were relevant in Europe, maybe that's going to be the death knell that you will become irrelevant in totality, right?
Yeah.
So maybe it's a career step you have to make to be considered relevant everywhere. Like, get to Europe, get to Asia, play Australia regularly, get around the world, be one of these bands who did show up in India and stuff like that, in Israel, right? So yeah, it's kind of an interesting point. A lot of these bands, possibly, if they had done that European thing, it might have helped. But anyways, so there you go.
Just real quick, Aller and Phil, did Public Enemy make any noise over there, or this was a U.S. rap act? And
no, and in fact, when you mentioned Prophets of Rage, people didn't do so well in Europe. They played in small venues. People were complaining there was not much rage in it.
Yeah,
but I definitely knew Public Enemy. I mean, I don't think they did much sales wise here, but in my youth, I knew of them. Funnily, I bought their second album, It Takes a Nation of Millions dollars back. I think it was my 14th or 15th birthday. I got some money and went to the record store, and I bought this one, and I bought a record by New Kids on the Block on the same day. That was not a problem for me. But I love Public Enemy. I got Fear of a Black Planet right when it came out, and they were a huge influence on me and my friend. We knew them. I mean, they had this great iconography with the logo and the bullseye and stuff.
Nice.
So we're the two people who like Public Enemy and Monster Magnet. I'm glad I found a kindred spirit.
Oh, Monster Magnet, love them.
Yeah, do. All right. Well, thanks, guys. That was a lot of fun. That was a good panel. So let us know in the comments below what you thought of these choices. Let us know some other choices of bands like this. And we've got a Patreon situation and stuff, and you can get on our panels and that. There, we've got merch, all that kind of thing. And we'll see you again next time. This was definitely a fun show. Thanks very much, guys.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Talk to you later.
Bye.